day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the eighth running of the Mental Takedown. This time we have Nebraska's incoming senior, Taylor Venz. Taylor is a two-time All-American and honestly is one of the more cerebral wrestlers that I've had on the show and offers a fresh new take on the way wrestling is meant to be thought, which is the entire point of this show. I'll keep this intro short because I know my last intro was like 5 minutes long and was probably quite boring. So without further ado, we'll just roll the clip. And through the power of the internet, we now have Nebraska's Taylor Venz joining us, an incoming senior. How are we doing today, Taylor?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
All good, all good. Now, given the uncertainty and kind of the way the season ended, given that now we've had, I guess, some time to reflect on everything that's happened, kind of what's your take and how was that different than, I guess, experiencing it in real time?
Yeah. It's definitely been, since the season ended and it was cut short and nationals didn't happen. That was such a big shock for so many people. It was like really hard to know what to feel right away. It's just different than anything else. And I think a big thing is just that, everyone was affected. It wasn't just me. Like there's people in slightly worse positions and, everyone who made it to that tournament, especially really just, it's kind of a kick in the gut. And, but as time goes on, and listening to other wrestlers and how they're dealing with it, I think it can be turned into a positive. And really, at this point, looking back, it stinks, but it's really because it stung for everybody. It's not just me. So it's almost makes it a little easier mentally,
Now, I guess what was interesting is kind of the selection show happened, I think maybe 24 hours before the whole situation went down. So I guess dynamically it must have felt kind of strange to be prepared. I know people like to say that they don't look at those things ever, but I find that slightly hard to believe, to be perfectly honest, right? Like you see those things, you think, oh, especially with them moving towards, everybody being seated. I think it was a couple of years ago. So I guess did that kind of add to more of the fact that we were so close to having it, and then Big Ten still happened. It's not like a big portion of the season was cut short. It was just the very end, I guess.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like that thing where if you were really far away from having something and you didn't get it, it doesn't hurt nearly as bad as if you were super close and then you just, got cut short. That hurts a lot worse. So, yeah, that's kind of how the season was. But, I was definitely looking at that stuff. I think everybody's got to look at the seedings at least just to kind of know your position, just logistically. But, it was that was tough for everybody. But right now, the hardest part is definitely not that getting canceled. It's just looking forward into the future,
Right. And I guess all indications still point to us having a season next year. God forbid. We haven't known anything about this virus since it started, so who knows what's the next chapter to be written. But I guess how has your kind of outlook on this upcoming season changed compared to maybe if this hadn't happened? I know I'll get into the more interesting stuff after we kind of run through these, but
I think going into your senior year of college is going to be different than every other year, even if without the pandemic and everything. Just the one last go, and you usually see guys like Princeton this year, Berger his senior year. I've seen a lot of seniors that just really turn it up and step up as leaders, and they just build their confidence even after losses. Seniors are really mature, and so thinking to myself, throughout my career, I've always thought, who do I want to be by the time I'm a senior? how good of a leader can I be? How good of a wrestler can I be? Stuff like that. And so that's, always going through my mind, and that's pretty much still what I'm thinking, just different circumstances. I can't, I haven't seen my teammates nearly as much as I would if we were doing camps all summer. We don't get to practice together. And so I'm thinking about my senior year and how I can be the best leader I can be. And it's just, it's a different time than any other time in my life. I don't think I've gone this long without real wrestling and competition for a lot of years. So it is kind of hard to adapt right now, but I think it's ultimately, I'm going to use it as a reset period, kind of rebuild from make sure I'm just well-rounded in my life before I worry about wrestling too much. And then, just kind of visualizing myself and how I'm going to take the mat, next year, whenever that happens.
Is this time probably has given you let's say more reflection time, and has it kind of led for you to see kind of your own identity, let's say off the mat, maybe some things you hadn't been seen before, given that you have been wrestling pretty much nonstop for the past, give or take, decade now?
Right. Yeah, that's spot on. That's what I'm noticing is just seeing my life without wrestling and seeing how much it kind of hurts to want to have that structure, and, figuring out what are you going to do about it, and what kind of things can I do to stay healthy mentally, and, just be on the right track during this kind of time where, things are fine in the present moment. And as long as I'm working out and I can work out on my own and, see my family and friends, I'm really not doing too bad. But as far as the specifics for next year, it's we might not start till spring. Who knows if it'll just be Big Ten competition or what that's going to look like. And so it's really I almost got to think it's just a big mystery, and you just got to take it day by day. And, that's basically what I've been doing.
What's interesting is just in general, season to season, does the mindset kind of carry over from season to season, or does it kind of reset more when you do have time off?
Mm-hmm. I think I try not to reset too much, but really just build year after year on what's working, what's not working. And it's kind of hard during the season to see that with a good perspective. But as time goes on and you can look at your season as a whole, more objectively as more time goes on, you get a better grasp of what kind of things worked and what didn't work. And just say it's more and more refined, and, always learning new stuff, reading books and talking to coaches, and just experiencing life, but trying not to overcomplicate it either.
So I guess the gauntlet that is the Big Ten, and competition-wise, you wrestle kind of many of the same guys over and over and over again. And this going into your fourth season of Big Ten competition, what are kind of the psychological aspects that go into week by week wrestling?
Yeah, definitely I'd describe them as a roller coaster at times. You wrestle, the same, like you said, the same guys a few times. In the Big Ten, you might wrestle them in a duel, and then at Big Tens, and then maybe nationals. And those are usually the guys that you got to beat to either be an All-American or a national champ. And so you're always thinking about, how can you beat them, and what are they doing? And I think it's probably better to kind of separate from don't make it personal. It's just competition. Nothing's personal, but I'm definitely invested, and I care about when it comes to being on the mat, as far as their skills versus mine. That's what I care about. And I think it's easy sometimes to get pulled into not liking an opponent or something. But one thing I noticed this year was one thing I realized was the more I respected my opponent and just said, that seems like a real good guy and he works hard, and I'm going to just go out there and have fun because he's a good wrestler too. That's when I wrestle my best. So, that's takeaway I had this year.
I guess also Nebraska, interestingly, I guess you're you going in with the program has kind of alongside catapulted Nebraska to a whole nother stratosphere of, like, let's say national prominence. How has like the team dynamic over your years at Nebraska changed, and how will it continue to change, I guess, for the better?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been changes throughout our program since I've been here, as far as some coaches coming and going and stuff like that. And just naturally, as seniors graduate and freshmen come in, um, you know, it's pretty tight bonds are created between, the classes and the team as a whole. And it really matters what those relationships look like. And I think, um, coming in my freshman class, we were a big class, and most of us made it all 4 years. Or actually, most of us are still going into our 5th year, but, a couple guys graduated. But anyway, as the team, develops, now we're the old guys. We were the young guys. We were kind of influenced by the seniors, like Dudley and Studebaker at my weight. And now I'm the old guy. And how am I going to influence them? It's definitely been fun watching the team change. And I think this year was by far our best year as like team chemistry goes. And I think it was our best year as a team in a long time too.
I guess then has your role on the team and the team dynamic shifted over the years as well, alongside kind of what has been going on?
A little bit. I think my coaches kind of told me, you're never too young to be a leader and be a good example. And so even, my redshirt year was definitely like, that was the big transition year where I'm just kind of seen, not heard, just put the work in and just wrestle. And I don't really need to be too outspoken at that point, because I know that I'm going to go through a lot of changes in the next few years. And at this point, it's pretty obvious, like I'm the senior, so I'd be expected almost to be outspoken to the other guys. And I think the coaches have definitely encouraged me and like let me know throughout the years during the season, like, we really see you as a leader, and that you have a powerful impact on the team and the culture and energy. And that's something that gives me, a big sense of responsibility, but that's, something that is great to have, is, some good responsibility as a leader, and then also coaches who support me through the process of competing and leading, and, just being a teammate. So it's great.
I guess kind of taking, I guess going a little bit further back, you won state as a freshman, and then didn't win it again until your last year.
Yep.
So I guess I don't want to say doubt having won it as a freshman and then not winning it sophomore and junior year, but I guess how have those experiences changed the outlook and the way you approach certain things, knowing that it's not always going to be a smooth road?
Right. I think so. My freshman year in high school, I won state at 106 pounds. And then the next year I took third, and the next year third again, and then won it at 182 pounds. And so those years were always big changes, big jumps in weight classes, and winning it early. Growing up, I had a passion for wrestling, and I figured I wanted to be a state champ. That was my goal, and I wanted to be multiple time, 2 or 3 timer. And I didn't expect to win my freshman year. So after I expected at the time, but early on, I didn't really expect it. And so then I was like, man, like I could be a 4-timer. And, having taken third those 2 years and like knowing that I didn't get the most out of it, that hurt. But, I came back for third, and those were some of the most, I remember those years almost just as much as the years I won. And the years I won are some of my best high school memories ever, and the years I lost are easily the worst. And you know, both those years I took third, and that's a big thing that like my dad has always preached is after you lose, coming back and not letting it affect you and keeping your head on straight, and coming back on the backside and beating guys who are losing, and that's fun for me, and that's what I like. Honestly, I'd rather win, but I think third place is better than second sometimes because you finish with a victory after you've already been defeated. And those years I lost for third place, and I won third place, and then I couldn't even watch the state finals because I was sick. Like, yeah, I literally puked after the state tournament when I didn't win it because I was so sick to my stomach. And that was, that just showed me that, like, when I won in my senior year, hey, like, you kept working, you kept putting on muscle, and it worked out in the end. So that's definitely something I've relied on throughout my college career, having gone through that in high school.
I guess you mentioned that at the beginning, at least, you didn't expect to win, especially your freshman year. I guess, is it more of an intuitive shift that, like, it goes from you working really hard every day towards a certain goal and then finally realizing that it is possible? Is it more of is there a moment you can pinpoint? Is it just kind of intuitively as it builds on?
Right. Yeah, that year, really, I was pretty tunnel vision. 7th grade in Minnesota, you can wrestle varsity. So I was a part-time starter. And then my 8th grade year, I was a starter, made to state. And by the time I was a freshman, I was just thinking, I wasn't really thinking about my total career goals. I was just thinking about that year. And as the preseason came around, I realized it was going to be, me and Mitchell McKee were the best two guys. And I'd wrestled them at Pinnacle. So I had to ask myself, hey, what weight class are you going to be at the end of the year? What's your realistic goal? I think I started off before the season started saying top 3, and that didn't sit right. And now that I tell that story, I remember that was probably the moment where I was like, it's when I realized, it just doesn't sit right with me to set a goal for top 3 because I know it's technically possible for me to beat this guy because he kicked my butt in practice, but I could get, if I could get one score every practice, then technically it was possible for me to outscore him one match. And so I felt that, and I was like, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to ride with that logic and intuition, and that carried me all the way there and got the job done. So.
And is that something that you have tried to apply throughout the rest of your career? Just kind of taking a narrative that a positive belief narrative and just pushing and running with it, and not trying to think too much to go along with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's where, when you're younger, life's a little bit simpler and you've had a little less experiences. And I was fortunate enough to have had great experiences as far as wrestling and just being supported and doing the sport that I love. And, all of my struggles in life essentially came from wrestling. And I recognized that, and that was okay. That's pretty rare though. And I'm pretty lucky. And at that time, it was a little easier to just think of a narrative that made sense and go with it. And, that's what you got to do in life, I think. And I just think it's tougher as you get older to do that. But absolutely, I've reflected on that and tried to apply it throughout, every year since. Just remember what it felt like to do something that nobody else thought you could do except for you and your dad. And just remember all the visualizing and all the passion you had, and and even remember the doubts that I had during that year. And yeah, that's definitely a year that I've got the picture up on my wall too of it too, so think about it a lot. But
now I guess something a little bit different is that you majored in psychology, no, at Nebraska? And I
Yep.
guess that is interesting in that a lot of wrestling's elements are psychological more than they are physical. And I
Hmm.
wonder if there's anything that you've taken from there that really maybe opened up your mind to certain things that maybe if you hadn't dove in so deep into kind of how the mind thinks.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's definitely, I basically chose the major because it's the most applicable to wrestling. Like literally the most applicable to wrestling that I could
Oh, so you
study.
actually chose your major based off of, oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty backwards, but like in my mind, I think it's important, obviously, to continue to push myself intellectually and grow in school, and that's great. But I'm really here for wrestling and to get good grades too. But I think that after college, I want to be a coach, and if that's my plan, and I believe that's going to happen, then I think it'd be okay for me to choose psychology. And that was my reason beforehand. But since I'm basically finished with the major. I'm
Yeah.
not. There's like a couple other requirements, but basically finished with all the classes I have to take and have learned so much from. I mean, it's usually like one really big thing I'll take away from one class one semester, or semi big thing, and then apply it to my life of wrestling. And I think sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it might be better to just not think about it too deeply and analytically. But I think that the reason I like thinking about psychology and sports psychology and stuff like that is I'm an overthinker. And so if I can like rationalize it in a way and come to understand it, then that'll help me.
And all the while kind of still maintaining like an intuitive element to go along
Right.
with. Yeah, okay. And I guess as your career kind of winds down and this is your last year, how do you personally use the idea of goal setting? Because I feel like that's an idea that gets tossed around, but no one really knows, like not many people know how to use it like correctly,
Mm-hmm.
or everyone has their own approach to kind of a vague term of what goal setting really means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's something I've been reading a book on, 10-minute toughness. Basically talks about goals. It's like a mental workout routine. Um, I can't remember who it's by. I should grab it, but yeah, it's called 10-minute toughness. And they talk about goal setting in there. And yeah, I think I mean, when I was younger, my philosophy was I have a goal and then I have a dream. And so I said, my goal is to be a state champ and my dream is to be a national champ. And right now, my goal is to be a national champ and my dream is to be an Olympic champ. And that's kind of like a super simple, not much else to it. That's just a super simple way of looking at it. But, there's different goals. It's you know, like you said, some people don't know how to set goals. There's difference between process goals and product goals. If is your goal to, you know, like get a final outcome, or is it to get really good at getting to the final outcome better? Is your goal to get better at the process, or is your goal just to get to the end? I think it's good to distinguish between those two and use both of them.
I guess I guess you mentioned coaching, and I wonder how, when you reflect on your career as a whole, how you take, like, let's say, your own experiences and try to extrapolate them on somebody that's, like, let's say, much younger or just coming up.
Yeah, I love coaching, and something I've kind of, if I look back when I was like a senior in high school, was when I first started doing maybe some youth practices, and then now I've done not a ton, but quite a few clinics here and there, and definitely lets me know that I'm in the right place, and that this sport's given a lot to me, and it would feel kind of wrong to not turn around and give back to it for the rest of my life, because that's going to give back, but even just selfishly, like that's going to make me feel great. if I can do that. And so that's definitely the path that I'm going to follow, and that's in my heart right now, for sure.
And I always end on a lighthearted question, and I guess I'll ask, how did you get into film editing and editing your own highlight videos?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. So when I was younger, my parents recorded my wrestling matches, and then I started like really wanting them to, so I could rewatch them. And I just loved going to the weekend tournament and getting 3 matches on film, and then coming home and like just watching them and talking to my dad about like what I did here and there, and like just rewatching the match for fun and just enjoyment too. And you know, that almost brings me as much joy as actually competing. So that was just like, you know, I'd love if I could get more joy out of wrestling, even when I'm sitting at home on my computer, then that's great. And so then my dad, I think he probably taught me how to use iMovie, and I learned pretty quick. And I just used iMovie on our Mac, you know, in middle school, and started putting together highlight videos from, you know, songs that I listened to at Pinnacle. I'd put those in the video, and then just evolved into, you know, now the wrestling highlight video world, or like the level is so high. I mean, there's so many cool highlight videos nowadays, and
it's insane. Oh
the editing is amazing, and there's just like young men popping up who are, you know, just doing awesome work. And one guy, Cole Schrupp, he used to do Minnesota's highlight videos. So I was from Minnesota, and I loved college wrestling, so I was a Gopher fan, and he would make their highlight videos, you know, every month or so during the season. And that's like what made me it's kind of what shaped how I visualize, you know. And I guess that's a big part of the highlight videos, is like, it's just visualizing, but you don't have to do any of the work. You just watch the video. And, you know, I have fun making them because it's kind of like a little art project. And, but afterwards, I don't like watch them all the time. But I noticed that like this year, if I'm about to take a test or something completely unwrestling related, if I watch my highlight video beforehand, I'll just get in a good mood. I'll be like, I feel confident. Like, I feel good. And so, you know, and then I post them online for other people, because why not? But yeah.
It's just a nice little like escape, or like little thought before anything important.
Yeah, it's good to look back and like maybe see a clip that you forgot you did, and just remember that moment, or what it felt like to get that takedown. And it's really just like having a mental highlight reel in real life. So yeah, it's fun to make them for myself, but I love watching them too. That's a big part of it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for putting up with me for half an hour. I'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your night. Thanks so much for popping on and talking to me for a little bit.
Yeah, no problem. I had a great time. It's a great conversation. And yeah, thanks for reaching out. I'm glad we made this work.
All right. Best of luck this year, all right?
All right. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Yep, you too.
Thank you for tuning in for the 8th installment of the Mental Takedown. And as always, best of luck to Taylor for his final collegiate wrestling season. If you did enjoy that episode and you're new here, please like, follow, do all that stuff on YouTube and Instagram. And be sure to check out my blog, which I update everything that's going on in the show, and sometimes just put random ramble thoughts that you may be interested in. But other than that, I hope you guys have the great rest of your day. And be sure to tune in for episode 9, which will be out probably very shortly, as I am trying my very best to do as many of these episodes as I can and get different perspectives from many different people. See you then.